Good evening, Canterbury. I'm Mike Yardley. Welcome to NewsMakers Extra. The local body elections are just 6 months away and the diverse parade of hopefuls will start declaring their intentions. Christchurch Mayor Bob Parker has confirmed he will be seeking a second term. And joining us to discuss a wide range of civic issues is the Mayor. Bob Parker, good to see you with your very fetching haircut.
G'day, yeah, that was all in the cause of charity, raising money for blood cancers like leukemia. So the deal was I got my hair cut off and somebody paid some bucks into the fund. Everybody's happy except Mrs. Parker.
Oh, really? Reservations?
Yeah, reservations, reservations. But it grows back, although I do think it is growing back more slowly than it used to, but never mind.
Good stuff. We will start with the big storm du jour in Canterbury, ECAN. Now, obviously you are facing plenty of accusations. People say you've got blood on your hands. Do you think you have taken a rather dispensable attitude towards democracy?
Well, I think the government's made a big call around putting in the commissioners for ECAN. But I think in the broader context of democracy, if a system is apparently not working, it needs to be fixed or it doesn't serve anybody. And I think that in ECAN's case, there's an evolution of the roles that they've been involved in, which the province has looked forward to seeing happen, but many of them, I think, have lost confidence in ECAN's ability to fulfil that role.
Is there something a wee bit egregious, though, about an elected mayor essentially cheerleading for a regime change that leaves voters completely disenfranchised?
Well, I dispute that I was cheerleading for it, but
the mayor's letter.
Yeah, the mayor's sent a letter and certainly outlining their subjective concerns around a number of issues at ECAN, and that was spurred in the light of the leadership challenge that was going on in ECAN. And here we have a whole lot of really important strategies and issues in which we depend on ECAN to deliver. And we have a record where many people have expressed a loss of confidence in their ability to carry out those roles. The previous government was involved. We've heard the comments of Trevor Mallard. There's been a lot of complaints and a lot of concerns. So I think that it needed to be fixed. Nobody likes this type of confrontation. It brings no pleasure to anybody, and it's certainly not a happy time for any elected official to see other elected officials being asked to step to one side for commissioners. So it is a tough call. It's not pleasant, and it isn't as good a democracy as we had before. There is no doubt about that, but there is also promised a result and a return to a democratic process that'll come about as the commissioners do their work. And I think sometimes you've got to fix things.
Mr Neil, the mild-mannered Mr Neil, has characterised your behaviour in the last week as, quote, destructive and agenda-driven.
Well, there is an agenda there, that's true.
For a unitary authority?
No, not for that at all, actually. The agenda really is about progress in this province, about actually our ability as a province to create things like jobs and wealth, about our ability as a province to put right those very important issues around the environment, and I think the costs as well that are inherent in the processes that we currently have.
Okay, but in terms of the changes that you have advocated being made at ECAN, I mean, when the Creech Review recommendations came out, you said you wanted all of these recommendations to be made, you wanted the government to move on all of the recommendations.
I do. I still feel the same way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why didn't you put that to a vote at council? Why wasn't there some sort of resolution from the wider council as opposed to just the mayor speaking on behalf of the council?
No, the mayor didn't speak on behalf of the council. In fact, in that letter we went to some lengths to point out that this was the subjective view of the mayors and their chief executives. It wasn't from the mayoral forum, and the mayoral forum of itself is not actually a statutory body anyway. You could say on the one hand it's a glamorised coffee club. We get together to talk about common issues. At that point there was a tremendous debate going on at ECAN itself about where it was going. There were allegations of conflicts of interest and so on. So there was a very mixed set of messages coming out of there. And in the light of that, and in the light of the historical frustrations that people have had about Environment Canterbury, and there's plenty of that on record, and in light of their poor performance in a number of issues, there was clearly a time to raise a hand and say, look, we've got concerns too.
Why didn't that go through a more formal process around the council table? Why didn't you seek a formal vote from your councillors at Chewham Street to declare their hand as to whether they had lost confidence in their regional cousins?
Well, we weren't saying that we had lost confidence in that letter. We were simply saying
a resolution for change.
We weren't even asking for change. We were simply saying, here are a number of relevant issues that we have all faced as councils that have concerned us. We've brought these issues up with ECAN along the way, so they're not surprises, and ECAN will have a different perspective. But in our subjective view, these are problems. And in the light of the fact that you've signalled that you're very interested in having a look at ECAN, if you're going to do that, here are some issues that we as mayors think you need to be aware of.
What indications have you been given, if any, that over the next 3 years there will be a move towards a unitary authority in Christchurch?
None. And in fact, if you look at the Creech report, I don't think it actually sets out as one of the roles of the commissioners to bring us to the point of a unitary authority. What do I think about a unitary? Well, I think a unitary is probably going to be a natural progression for the city anyway, sooner or later. Was I advocating for a unitary? No, I haven't been particularly strong in advocating for a unitary. And in fact, one of the reasons, and I chaired the urban development strategy, and one of the reasons that I was very keen to chair that was the idea of changing boundaries or shifting roles becomes redundant when you have a really good relationship built around a strong set of shared responsibilities. So, I've not advocated strongly for it, but I can see that there are possibilities out there.
With respect, the Creech report actually has a quote
it does.
of the City Council supporting unitary authorities. Has that been misrepresented?
Well, I'm a bit surprised, and I was surprised when I read that, because certainly that was raised in the discussion with the commissioners. What do you think about a unitary authority, blah, blah, blah. And, I have some reservations about areas in which we would need to be able to give confidence to the community, for example, around decisions around environmental issues where the council's a party. But I also said, look, we could do it. There's no doubt about that. And there are many, including the previous mayor, who had advocated incredibly strongly for that. But I pointed out that it wasn't a formal position of council.
Okay.
Still isn't.
What do you say to people, Bob, who say, why should I pay ECAN rates when I don't have a voice and I don't have a vote?
Well, I think people have to understand that we're all in this together as a province, and that we are trying to, I think, the government is trying to transition what has been a situation where quite clearly to have 10 mayors, for example, to have members of Parliament of both sides of the House, although of course post-election the Labour position appears to be slightly different, saying that there are issues here. Brendan Burns himself asked for the government to inquire into ECAN, you recall, over the conflict of issues.
So as Alec Neil has said, if the special powers that have been granted to the commissioners had been granted to the regional council, wouldn't that have been arguably a far better outcome, as opposed to decapitating a democratic organ?
Maybe that will be one of the outcomes of the commissioners.
Okay.
I mean, the commissioners have been asked to go in and do a job of work. First of all, to get the organisation running well. And they've been given a set of criteria that they've been asked to look at. But their findings may well be that ECAN be reinstituted with those changes. So, I mean, in order for that work to be done, you actually have to stop that process for a little while and look at the machinery. And if there wasn't a general lack of confidence from a lot of quarters, not everybody I know, and there are lots of views on this, but there is a very strong view from across the province, particularly in those rural councils, that their voices were not being heard in an appropriate way, and the decisions that they were getting did not give them a sense of confidence. Now, that's important, and it's really important, because water is at the future, at the centre of this whole province's sense of being. And we need to work these problems out.
Okay, we'll take a break. We'll look at some annual plan nuggets very shortly with the Mayor. Do stay with us.